Well, good afternoon and welcome to Rational Radio. My name's Alec Hogg, coming to you from Johannesburg, a beautiful, warm, sunshiny Johannesburg. And as always, David Shapiro is with us from his part of Johannesburg. Dave, are you all strong, fit, no COVID attacks yet?
No, very behaving myself, staying in lockdown, not going to see anybody, no grandchildren, nothing. It's miserable, but what can I do? It's anyway, I've got a big garden out here, which doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the building. And I sit on a log and make my phone calls in the hot winter sun.
We're so privileged. And maybe that's one of the reasons why South Africa is a little better off than any other country. Because we do have this very pleasant winter weather, certainly up here on the Highveld. But the numbers are looking very scary at the moment. We had more than 7,000 infections yesterday, the top 5 now in the world on the number of new infections. And totally around the world, yesterday, the World Health Organization said it had the highest number of new infections since the coronavirus started. So you're doing the right thing, Dave. But we're not here. Before we get into our discussion about investment issues, etc., Stuart, can you give us just a little bit of the detail from your side on how people can ask questions? And I'm hearing some feedback, Stu. I don't know where that's coming from, but anyway, I hope it isn't too bad on your side.
Thanks, Alec. Always good to be here. Thanks as well, Dave, on your side. I think there's a feedback, Dave. I don't know if there's another TV on or something. There's noise coming through, but it's not on Alec or my side. It's on, there we go, 100%.
Okay. It was on 0. I took it to -0.
Okay, cool. We got that.
I thought you were watching another webinar, Dave.
Sorry, for the listeners, if you can see Alec and Dave and there's a presentation underneath and hear my voice, there's a little high-five button on your control panel on the right-hand side. If you can start giving me some of those, and if the sound is too soft, just let us know. Alec can bump it up his side. I've got some high-fives coming through, Alec, so that's a good sign. We do like to keep it conversational, so there's 2 ways of questions. The old traditional way is on the control panel, there's a questions drop-down menu. You can manually put your question in there, Alec will pick it up and pass it on. Because it is a premium webinar, we would like to try the audio option. So if you would like your questions asked in person, you just let us know in the questions panel. Just say, please open my mic, and then I'll open your mic and you can ask Dave, Alec, or any of the other guests the questions yourselves. It is a new thing, so we'll try our best to make it work. But Alec, that's it from my side.
Have you got a new webinar going on there, David?
No. Can you hear something?
So that's not moving furniture in your house. Anyway, it doesn't. I'm just joking. We've got a really, really good lineup today. Sun International, Anthony Leeming is going to talk to us, and then we're going to be chatting to William van der Riet, who is the owner of Cathedral Peak Hotel. It's a 4-star hotel in the Drakensberg, and also bringing in Ryan Woolley. And the reason for that is that both of these guys are having serious issues now with this business interruption insurance. I mean, Dave, I don't know if you've been following the story, but it's specifically written in the cover that if there is a disease that causes your hotel to close down or within 50-kilometer radius of your business and it stops you from operating, then the business interruption insurance kicks in. But what's happened is that the insurers are just refusing to pay. They've literally taken a view that this is existential for them, the COVID-19 crisis, and they'll fight it all the way to the courts. So you're having many businesses now that took out the insurance in good faith, even had a special clause in there, which is almost, you could have written it for the COVID-19 pandemic, and now the insurance companies will not pay. Oh, that's shocking.
Alec, this is not the only instance that we've seen where companies are not fulfilling their obligations. This is nothing new, and I can't understand it, particularly, where an insurance company is involved. They're normally high-level businesses. They're normally businesses that make up the South African economy, and one would expect better conduct. It's not these businesses' faults. They took out the cover in case something like this happens. And I can never understand why insurance businesses always try and avoid their obligations where there are 50-50. At least meet halfway, or at least meet four-way. You understand that your clients have paid you the premiums in good faith. Why are we always trying to avoid paying out? They have come, of course, they've got their lawyers and they've got the small print. And that's the danger. It's always that small print and having to go to court. You're running a small hotel in good faith. You haven't got the resources that these businesses have. I just find it astonishing. I find it the same, with companies who won't pay their landlords, very big and wealthy businesses who have got the access to resources. Who in a situation like this, which is brought about by no fault of their own, find themselves in a situation like this. So they're going to lose a client. Yes, they might save money, but at the end of the day, these businesses are not going to survive. And, no one's going to come and take them over or rebuild them. So sad.
Well, we'll have more on that story later. Also today, Ian Kantor, who he was the founder of Investec in 1975. He is stepping off the board in August this year after 45 years. He was the first CEO, then he was the chairman until 2002. You might remember that Ian and his family relocated to the Netherlands in 1988. So he is the elder brother of Bernard Kantor, who many people know as the managing director. And I was actually talking to Stephen Kossef, the ex-CEO, long-time CEO, who succeeded Ian actually as executive, and suggested to him that we have almost like a friends reunion. We have an Investec founders reunion. Wouldn't that be interesting, David?
Now, Ian was, I know they're going to dislike me for saying that. He's a smart one. Ian was the real smart one. He was the kind of brains. I'm not taking anything away from Stephen or Bernard and that, but Ian's a man that you can learn a lot from. Not that I don't want to say that you can't learn from others, but I love Ian. Ian's great, and always fresh ideas and always a fresh perspective. And I think the man who put the whole of Investec together, the others built it up, but I think Ian was the visionary.
Yeah, undoubtedly. I had the privilege of knowing him quite well before he left as a journalist in the 80s. He went on to do big things in Insinger in the Netherlands as well. So anyway, it's going to be great talking to him at 1:45. Get your questions lined up for that one. And of course, this is an interactive webinar, as Stuart said a bit earlier. So send your questions through. We'll be happy to take them. Dave, you helped us out last week with pointing out the whole Sasol story. How has the share price reacted in the past 5 trading sessions?
Well, I hope you sold.
Of course we did. We sold the next day. So your advice is good.
I see it's gone down. Yeah, I think it will. It's just simply on the fundamentals. I think they're pointing downwards, and you'll probably find the share price heading closer towards 100 than 150. Just under a bit of pressure at the moment, as all markets are. But Alec, the story to continue is that the so-called retail investors are now turning their eyes on Asia, which is dangerous, and that's starting to scare the professionals as well when they start to take some Asian shares and pushing them through the roof for no reason at all. But it's a story.
The day traders who were playing around with inter alia Sasol, these day traders from America, are now looking at what, Tencent, Alibaba, stocks like that?
Probably new emerging Chinese companies, So I haven't seen exactly what they're looking at. I've just picked up the headline that they've started to turn their attention there. You've got to follow the sites. You've got to follow where they meet on social media to understand what the next big things are going to be. But it's not something that I pay a lot of attention to, other than it's still a big thing, and the talk is still around the companies that they're going to buy. So watch the space.
What would Mr. Buffett do in a case like this? Would he take advantage of the day traders, do you think?
No, not at all. You wouldn't pay any attention to it. This is Mr. Market at his best. It happens. I mean, it happens in different forms. I've lived through it certainly in 1969. I came in the aftermath of that, but in '87 it was there. It was there in the, we saw it. For those who are still around, I mean, who are still young enough, will remember the internet boom. Where it was Pets R Us and Pets.com, all those kind of .com companies as well. It does take place. You do find these periods of insanity. This will not have much of an effect as it did in other boom markets. We've seen it in property. We've seen it in a whole lot of areas where madness takes place, and people who are normally rational just lose all sense of reality and get involved in the market. So this is just another form of what we've seen for many, many times, certainly in my history.
Stu, we are going to be taking questions. Stu, have you picked any up yet?
On my side, Alec, yes, there was one on Tencent and Alibaba, as you mentioned, from Harry Walt. It says, which shares do you recommend to buy on the Hang Seng? I'm not sure if that's anything on your side there, Dave.
I'm still a Tencent fan and an Alibaba fan, simply because of the huge numbers of people that we have in China. And I think you need to go through Tencent's results in a bit of detail just to see what a powerful organization they are. And there was a wonderful lead in the Economist this weekend on gaming, that gaming should be an Olympic sport, and they drew attention, and this is why I'm bringing up Tencent. And I mean, this applies more to the UK, but you can absolutely look at China as well. But in the UK, those people the youngsters between 16 and 19 who participate in traditional sports are about 28%. Those that actually play video games are about 57%. So, I mean, there's a huge number of kids that are involved in the excitement, and just to cut the, I don't want to go through the whole leader, but making it a sport, at the Olympics, they did draw attention. They said, it's exciting, and for excitement, just think about the 20K, a walk, fast. What are they called? Speed walk. That's exciting. What would you rather watch? People playing video games or watching it? Walk for 20K. So I think that said it all. But it's a very, very big area with lots of money. So that and all the other things that you'll find in Tencent, I think it's a remarkable company.
You have to wonder what the ancient Greeks who created the whole Olympics would have to think about, kids who are couch potatoes. Very good reflexes, but that's about it. Participate.
Well, they brought it in. In fact, they said that that's why you've got javelin throwing and discus throwing and wrestling, and that those all came from the ancient Greeks. So that was popular then. So this is popular now. And that's the reason.
Modernization. David, two other stories that are going on in the JSE at the moment. Let's start with Sun International. This hostile takeover bid from the Chilean company. It looks very messy all around, doesn't it?
I don't understand, fully understand what it's all about. But I side with Alan Gray and Value Investment, saying, hold on a sec, these are ridiculously low levels. This is a very proud and good company, and I think you just need things to normalize now to get a lot more value for it. So I think it's a very cheeky bid, and it's also perhaps reflecting or deflecting some of the conflicts that they are finding through other deals. So I think for the meantime, I would just brush it aside as something that's not going to happen.
Well, why don't we bring in Anthony Leeming? I see he is there. Anthony, could you open your microphone and your video camera?
You should be there, Alex. Sorry, I'm just trying to see if I can.
There we go. Camera's there. Hi, Anthony. Okay, and there we go. You should be able to hear us as well. Perfect.
Yes.
Good, man. It's thanks for joining us. David has just made a mention about what's been going on with the Chileans, but just take us through a little bit of background from what one can read. These are your partners in South America.
That's right. They are partnered, the 35% shareholder in our business there is Sun Dreams.
And they then now want to buy the whole of Sun International instead of doing the deal on Sun Dreams. Just explain to us what went on there. It sounds very messy.
It's not quite instead of. I mean, I think we did a transaction last year. You'll recall we announced disposing 15% in Sun Dreams to Pacifica. That deal was supposed to be approved last year. We got all the regulatory approvals. They're claiming that the long stop dates have gone through, but it actually wasn't a long stop date. So we're busy dealing with them at the moment. We're not fighting particularly, but this deal should conclude, and we need to make sure they fulfill the obligations.
What's a long stop date?
Well, generally, most agreements will have a long stop date, and by that date, if conditions aren't fulfilled, the transaction will fall over. In this case, it wasn't the case. They don't fall over, and therefore we are still in discussions and in arbitration with them.
But it sounds, as David was saying, sounds quite cheeky that they were going to pay you 1.5 billion rand for 15% of your South American subsidiary, but now they're going to want to take the same money and buy control of your company. Yeah. It does seem, have circumstances changed that much at Sun International?
Yeah, no, well, it's not the same money. I think in essence, if you read their offer, they were saying the litigation would remain. They wouldn't do anything about it. So they were suggesting suspend. But given the materiality of it, obviously as a board, and we couldn't accept that position. So if they don't want to resolve, they need to resolve that before we would consider anything. In any event, I think, as David said, that it was very opportunistic. I don't think the offer anywhere near reflects fair value. Yes, we're going through a tough time. We've got a bit of liquidation. I don't want to say that's the wrong word. Liquidity issue. So yeah, times are difficult. We closed. We've got no revenue. Fortunately, we should be opening later today, and if not by tomorrow at the latest. So liquidity is the big issue at the moment, not the value. We have a great business. The assets have been built, and certainly the value is there to grow into the future.
But how do you continue to operate with a partner in a major part of your business where they've shown themselves to be opportunistic like this?
Well, I think at the end of the day, both of us have the same interest to make sure the company over there is successful. They've also got 35% stake, and if they lose that, it would be like us losing ours. So I think both have to work together in the interest of the company. It does make things a little bit difficult compared to normal, but certainly our view on the company there is it needs to renew its licenses. It's got some issues there in terms of the renewal license, the renewals that are going to take place, and that's the priority. So I think the company's got its priorities mapped out for the next couple of years, and we will deal with the partner issues as a shareholder issue as opposed to a company issue.
The last time a South American company attempted to do a deal in South Africa was with Adcock Ingram. I'm sure you recall, with Brian Joffe, and I'm sure David recalls that very well. It really turned nasty until eventually Joffe managed to do the acquisition of Adcock Ingram, which I think he would, with hindsight, have preferred that somebody else had taken it over. Do you have any parallels here?
No, I don't think so. I think the difference is here. I mean, their offer has been so our shareholders have rejected it outright. There's not one that I found supported, and we have a lot of support for our rights issue that we're going from our shareholders, and that's the priority. As I said, it's a liquidity issue, not a problem with the business. The business is sound, Just prior to lockdown, you'd have seen we released results with 91% up in earnings, debt under control. And right now, we just need the liquidity to continue operating, get through the COVID crisis. And I'm very confident that we will return back to sort of pre-COVID days down the line.
Anthony, just explain the strategy then with the rights issue.
Well, at this stage, obviously, there's as I mentioned, liquidity issue. I think we've got to balance the needs of the banks, the needs of the company, and shareholders' ability to put funding in the company. So we need the money right now to ensure the banks will give us the waiver of the covenants until next year, so that we've got room to operate, room to recover, and we don't have the banks on our back trying to push, to get money back at this point in time. So we've got the ability to trade through this, and that's the priority, really the issue for the rights offer.
What do you make of the announcement from the tourism minister on Friday? Is that going to help the tourism sector?
Well, we still haven't got interprovincial travel, so we're still battling, and we don't understand, Sun City can't operate without interprovincial travel. Same for Wild Coast. So I think from a tourism side, we are not, it's not the biggest part of our business, but certainly it's an important part and we want it back, and we need to keep pushing to get the interprovincial travel, even if it is based on a letter of confirmation, confirmed booking, and then we could reopen. So I think it will come down the line. The tourism minister has worked well with us, as the industry worked very well. The government obviously has to deal with their priorities, and I think we've proven that we can do it, and through the casino space, we'll prove that we can handle the environment, and that's critical. And once they see that, we're certainly hoping that they'll progress with the travel restrictions that are currently in place.
So the big thing is the provincial borders that are not able to be crossed at the moment.
Absolutely. I mean, you go to the Wild Coast, you've got a bridge, a river, and there's the Wild Coast, and all our customers are coming from KZN. So we're dealing with government seeing we can't do something in that circumstance. I mean, it's a critical, income generator for those employees down in the Wild Coast. It's a really important asset for ours, and certainly for the employees, it's critical we get open so they can start working again. So I think it's important, and interprovincial travel is key. Sun City will not survive unless you've got people coming from Gauteng.
Have you had any opportunities to engage with the state or with the public officials on issues like this? Surely you would have thought that there might be a way around. If you have a booking in Sun City, then you could get yourself a permit to go across the provincial border between Gauteng and Northwest.
Yeah, we have engaged, and we obviously constantly following up on this. I mean, it was one of our, right up front, we said we'll need this as a requirement to open the tourism industry. So to say that 400,000 people are going to be back at work is a massive overstatement if you've still got these big restrictions on us. So, even now, even like I say, in the casino environment, we've got only 50% of capacity. We've got no alcohol being served and no buffets. So we're limited in terms of how many employees we can bring back to work. And certainly a place like Sun City, which employs just not us alone, probably 3,000-4,000 people, you can't bring them back until you allow that travel. So I think the government will do a lot more lobbying. We're pushing hard. The government has been receptive to the tourism industry, hence why the president placed the emphasis. And I think these things will unlock with time. It's a very difficult position, and the government finds themselves in trying to balance the health, all industries trying to do things. The segregated industry, I think taking them to court hasn't worked very well for them. And certainly we followed a different approach.
Well, let's hope that we get through this peak, because as we're all very aware, the COVID-19 pandemic is now really getting a lot of steam here in South Africa and elsewhere in the world. David, before we let Anthony go back to running his business, what have you got any thoughts?
No, my only thoughts of are the survival of this business. I mean, this is a noble business, and it applies to the whole tourism industry. I mean, if we look at City Lodge, if we look at other businesses in the area, if we don't come to their assistance, if we don't save them, this is the backbone of the whole redevelopment plan. South Africa will not exist without without tourism. So my hope is that Anthony can find a bridge, and it scares me what the consequences are if companies like Sun International, feel the pressure and are forced to go or liquidate some of their assets. You don't want that to happen. So, watching the businesses there, and that's why I say it's such a cheeky bid, because when you see the market cap of Sun International on the market, I mean, it's no more than a couple of billion rand with all that bricks and mortars and the machinery and the people and the the intellectual value around, the goodwill. It's just crazy. So, my worries are, my views are that, one has to do as much as we can to save this industry and save it soon. So, yeah.
Anthony, will the rights issue be okay? Will that be enough to see you through?
Look, absolutely. I mean, we had a long discussion with Shell the other day, and there was the question, well, why don't you do more, make sure. I think Shell is also under pressure in terms of their options and how much money they can put into different assets. I think at the end of the day, when you look out in a year's time as a shareholder, I would rather say you had the right number and come back if I haven't, because they can make that choice, that decision, because I think it's uncertain in the future. We all know that. I think the good thing, and just coming back to COVID, the death rate is plummeting. So that's a very important element, because it means it's easier to live with the virus. So the death rates come up drastically all around the world. And I think even in South Africa, it's slowing because the treatments are getting better. And that will enable us to live with the virus, and therefore, hopefully a quicker recovery down the line.
Yep, indeed. And just for those who want to visit your resorts or go and play in the casinos, when do they reopen?
Well, the casinos are opening tonight if the regs come out. And then obviously tomorrow we'll open all of them definitely, other than, as mentioned, Wild Coast, Sun City, Table Bay and Maslow won't open. But all the other casinos, the major metropolitan casinos, will open in the next day or two.
Anthony Leeming is the Chief Executive of Sun International. Thanks, Anthony, for being with us today. Appreciate the update. Well, Dave, there you have it. The Sun International share price. Is it something that you would be buying into ahead of the rights issue?
Look, I've got my cheeky portfolio, and my cheeky portfolio is those businesses that are being thrown away in South Africa, which would include construction businesses as well as leisure businesses, and certainly Sun International is amongst them. I think for value players, this has got to be a sure bet. If you're prepared to wait, if you're prepared to just sit aside and watch this, City Lodge, Sun International, the underlying value is just is very compelling. So I think from that point of view, yeah, it's something that must be looked at.
Anthony's still there. I'm going to just ask one last question, because I'm sure that this is very relevant to what you said. Anthony, what is the replacement value? Forget the brand, the value of Sun International brands. What's the replacement value of the hotels that you own?
Yeah, if you start looking at insured value of our assets, it's always difficult to put a value on some of these things, because it's the license that's worth the most. But you run into 20, 30 billions. You can't replace Sun City. Yeah.
Well, here we have it, David. So you talk about a value play at a what's that? 1/6, 1/7.
Yeah, it's almost a 10th. So it's crazy.
Okay, so cheeky portfolio. So that's what you will be doing. You will be buying Sun International
for my cheeky.
Well, let's bring in William van der Riet now. He is also a hotelier, but at a different level completely. And William, I'm not sure if you can put your webcam on. I know you're in the sticks, as you call it, in the Drakensberg. There we go. Okay, at least we can see you. Can you hear me at least? It says William is offline. So I think what I'll do is I'll try and give him a call and see if we can. Unfortunately, having lived in that area, I know that the connections in that part of KZN are not always the best. But anyway, we'll try and get William to join us. But before he does, Ryan Woolley is with us as well. Ryan, can you hear me nice and clearly?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Well, let's put your camera on at least. I think that you're we're closer to where the strong bandwidth exists. So
yes,
we should
absolutely.
To have a conversation there while I get hold of William as well on just on the phone call. Just to go by way of background, the insurance companies have put special or have allowed to put special clauses Oh, William? No, I tell you what,
Yes.
William, okay, there we go. We got you nice and loud and clear this time. You with us. We've also got Ryan Woolley with us. Ryan is representing a lot of people who are in a similar situation to you, but perhaps you could just tell us your story, a little bit of the story of Cathedral Peak and why you decided in the first place to go for business interference or insurance. In other words, that if your business were to be affected by something like what we're seeing with the pandemic, that you wanted to be insured against it.
Sorry, I lost you there for a second on the first part of the question.
Just tell us your story.
Well, yeah, we are very isolated, as you're aware. So we've always had the risk of being cut off either by the road access or a situation like this. So we have gone for this specific policy for this very reason. And, we took the extension and we've been paying our dues since 2009. And here we find ourselves in a situation where we need the insurers and they've turned their back on us.
So for more than 10 years then, you've been paying for business interruption insurance. Have you ever claimed up to this point?
We have never claimed on business interruption. We've had other policy claims, obviously, but not on the business interruption. And we've been paying since 2009, and we calculated that our fees had been in the region of $9.5 million to date. So they've taken our money in good faith for all these years. And here in a time of crisis, when we need them, they're not there for us.
William, how much would you be claiming?
Ryan Woolley's company have calculated that we are probably looking at a loss over 12 months in the region of 21 to 22 million, because our policy was for a 12-month period from the time of our first claim. So we're going to be in for about 22 million thereabouts.
I didn't know you were one of Ryan's clients, but it's nice that we also asked Ryan to join us today. Ryan, this sounds very unfair. $9.5 million over 10 years. If you take the value of that cash, just deflate it, then you'd probably easily get to 21 million. So the insurance company wouldn't really be making a big loss on Cathedral Peak Hotel. What are they saying to you that why they won't pay?
No, they still all the insurers have essentially, barring our insurance, have essentially said that that they don't see the lockdown period as being covered, and that they believe that this is an intervening cause and not what the policy was designed to cover. But it's a completely nonsensical approach. Without COVID-19, you don't have the lockdown restrictions and measures. These insurers, like William said, have chosen to insure a notifiable disease. The insurer that he's with has got a very simply worded policy that says if there's a notifiable disease that affects the business within a 50-kilometer radius, their claim is payable. So it's their approach is one where they say, show us how the 1 or 2 cases that you've identified that of being positive COVID cases has directly caused your business to be interrupted or interfered with. And they're not interested in anything with regards to government restrictions or any of the interventions. And we just think that they are interpreting the policy in their favor, that they are trying everything to try and get out of this. But essentially the wording it's not worth the paper it's written on if it doesn't get interpreted the way that William and ourselves see it, which is if you have a notifiable disease that occurs anywhere within your radius that creates fear, that creates loss of attraction, or anything of the like, as well as the government's intervention and restrictions for notifiable disease, then how else could the policy respond?
What if the policy is not applicable in this case? The obvious question to them is, well, when will it be applicable? If it isn't with COVID-19, when are you actually going to pay out on this 9.5 million rands worth of premiums that William has paid?
Absolutely, that's exactly the point. is that, the way that we've interpreted it, it's the way that our insurance interpret it. It's the way that, anybody who applies any common sense to this, a judge, I'm sure at some stage will sit and interpret it exactly the same as we are. But, it's a sad indictment on the industry if we've got to wait for 2 to 3 years and watch businesses that have been around like Williams, like Cathedral Peak, which is an institution, to see those businesses fail because insurers have not come to the party is just devastating.
Good. It looks like we might have lost William. William, can you hear us? Oh, you are here.
I can hear you. Yep.
Okay. Excellent. I was about to try and phone you on my phone, but obviously we've made another plan. So you are the second generation. Did your father or your family presumably started the hotel?
Yes, that's correct. My dad was a farmer originally. He used to farm in the area of Olifeers Hook Pass and then laterally down about 45 k's down the valley from the hotel. And they used to go on horseback hunting up in the Drakensberg because there were no roads or anything. It was just grazing veld. And he located the landowner in the 1930s and negotiated to buy the piece of property and literally built it from the ground up. There was absolutely nothing there. In fact, they had to make the road to get to the property. And then, of course, the Second World War came along and that interrupted business and made things very difficult for them back in the early days. So, yeah, we've been there 81 years. We used to kind of joke about, wouldn't the hotel be so nice with no guests and no staff with this whole place to ourselves? Little did we know that this COVID thing would come along and we would be in this situation. So it's really scary for us.
So 81 years, are you able to survive this?
Not without help. Our overheads at the moment are between 800,000 and $1 million a month with security, which we've had to keep on to protect the property, and with the various insurance policies, medical aid, UIF, etc. We've got massive overheads, and we've kind of maxed out on our credit limits at this stage. So if we don't get help soon, we're going to be in serious trouble, and we'll have to try and approach the banks to get interim financing. But we're still hopeful that the insurers will come to their senses and make some sort of offer on this, some negotiated settlement. And, I just don't understand why the industry has not adopted a proactive approach from the beginning and said, listen, guys, we acknowledge that we are in this thing and your policy is valid, but we can't meet the quantum. We can offer you a percentage and then give you a discounted rate for the next 2 years, or some sort of proactive approach instead of just absolutely slamming the door in our faces. It makes no sense.
Ryan, it sounds almost like a cartel type approach from the insurance companies. You did mention outsurance have broken ranks,
very
but
unified. Outsurance have broken ranks. I spoke to Donnie Mattia, the CEO, on Friday, and applaud him for the efforts that they've made. They've been paying the claims since mid-April, and his view is very clear. His interpretation of the policy is well aligned with ours, and he's also been quite vocal with their meetings with the FSCA and the like, and we can only hope that common sense prevails, like William says. With Guard Risk, we've extended the olive branch. We've asked for a meeting with them. We are waiting for confirmation of those dates. But unfortunately, we can't wait. So the applications are going off, and we'll be looking for our day in court.
Guard Risk. That's the people who you've been paying, William.
We pay our broker, and the policy is underwritten by Guard Risk, correct?
And what does your broker say about this, being the intermediary between you and the insurance company that won't pay?
When this whole COVID thing started breaking in February, I had conversations with him where he indicated that we were in good standing. Our policy was the best policy money could buy, and once we had a case within 50 kilometers, we would have a valid claim. And we lodged our claim. We had a case 5 days before lockdown, and we lodged our claim. And as everyone will tell you who's in the situation, they've asked for more information, which you give them. They ask for more information, you give it, and they string you along for now 3 months. So, we should have been paid out. And in fact, the insurers have indicated at the moment they will consider paying us out for the 5 days between our first claim and the lockdown, which is also totally ludicrous. But yeah, they're hiding behind their lawyers and fancy wording, but we believe we should be paid.
What about government? Surely, if there's one instance where government needs to step in, this would be it, given the philosophy that government has towards tourism being a huge part of the development of South Africa. Ryan, have you had much success with it?
We've definitely lobbied support from all the associations within the tourism sector. On Friday, we reached out to the Minister of Tourism in a formal letter to ask for her intervention in the matter.
William?
Yeah, the tragedy is that where we're situated, we've been there 81 years. We employ from our local community. At the moment, we have 200 odd staff, and in days of better business, we had over 300 staff. And 300 staff support thousands and thousands of family members. And we're all in this predicament. We are the major employer in our valley. So if we go down, there will be a lot of people without jobs. And you would really think that the government should intervene in some form. But the bank loans that are available via the government don't really help, because you have to start paying that back within 3 months. And if we're not allowed to operate, we can't pay a loan back. So they've actually rejected the claims. And most of the other schemes are available for small black-owned businesses and not available for businesses like ours and the Tsogo Sons and so on. So it's a real catch-22.
And just to close off with, William, when are you going to be allowed to take bookings again?
Well, this is another point. The statements that are going out about tourism being open for, you can go for a hike and you can go and play golf and you can go fishing. But some have interpreted that means leisure hotels are open. But we are not of that opinion. We are of the opinion that we will not be allowed to open for accommodation until level 1. But right now, there is a lot of confusion out there. And as I said, I know some businesses that are just opening and saying, well, the government must do what they have to do, but they can't carry on surviving with no income. So we don't know when we're opening. There's absolutely no indication. We're hoping by later in the year, but I believe this COVID story is just beginning. The numbers are going to skyrocket now. In areas like ours, they have not been practicing social distancing or anything like that. They've been carrying on like nothing's happened. And when we do open, our staff come from that area. So what's going to happen? We're caught in the middle of a really tough situation.
Just to finish off with, do you get most of your visitors from KwaZulu-Natal? In other words, the interprovincial transport banning, does that affect you?
Yes, it will. About 20% of our business is overseas, so we know that'll be gone for 18 months to 2 years, in my opinion. And then the rest is pretty well spread around the country. Probably only about 30%, 40% comes from KZN. So it's not going to be easy. And also when we do open, I'm sure we will not be able to open at full capacity, even if we could fill a hotel. There are going to be restrictions on numbers and all the rest. And the problem is our staff want to be paid. So
you're not taking bookings yet?
No, we're not taking bookings yet. Some businesses are, but we are of the opinion that it's pointless taking bookings until you know when you can honor them.
Thanks to William van der Riet, the owner of the Cathedral Peak Hotel, and also to Ryan Woolley, who has been representing hundreds of tourism businesses in their fight against the insurers who, as you heard earlier, for some unknown reason, not unknown, it's very well known, isn't it, David Shapiro? They're probably going to go bankrupt if they have to settle all the claims, which so they were happy to take the money, but now they don't, they're not prepared to pay.
But that's why we got insurance companies to cover us for that very reason. So, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Perfectly. Yeah.
But I'm saying that's the very reason. And the one thing that we're going to learn from this, Alec, those companies that are going to emerge, that we're going to applaud and celebrate and value, and they're those that we're not going to be in the opposite direction, that we're going to avoid. And these are the businesses. And it's, I keep saying this over and over. They didn't ask for this. Cathedral Peak Hotel didn't ask for us. It was forced upon them. try and help them through this. He has a business since 1939, and it's just one of many, whether it's Sun International, whether it's companies, especially the smaller businesses. It's just tragic, and we will never recover unless we support them, unless we do everything. And it's those with the money that are turning away. And it's smart lawyers looking for small print that are not honoring their obligations. Why go to court? Anyway, it's a tragic story.
Well, I remember that when I first met Ian Kantor, who is our next guest today. Ian, I've got your microphone open. Can you hear us?
I can hear you, Alec. Can you hear me?
Brilliant. Yes, I can. And we're going to try and get your camera on as well, so we can see more than just your picture on the screen. If you there's a little video, like a video camera on your. If you could click that.
I want to see if Ian Kantor would have anything to say about it.
Okay.
Can you click it on for me?
That is a word with him and say we're going to Investec.
Sorry, Stuart. We're getting feedback here from William, I think.
William just to put his phone down, Alec. I think his phone's still on. That's the problem. Yeah.
Okay.
No,
all right.
I'm still here. Do you want me off?
Yeah, please, William, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Alec.
Man, bye-bye then. There you go, Ian. I remember when meeting you in 1980 as a young reporter, you used to be in a building with a company whose slogan was, "We don't hassle, we pay," RGI.
Correct. I wonder what happened to them, Alec. How are you? Amazing what you're doing. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. But isn't it incredible how the insurance companies are currently walking away from their responsibilities? That's got to be dumb from a long-term perspective.
God, Alec, it's not for me to talk. I'm not in the business. I don't know it, but I know we used to have a saying in those days that the insurance business is voluntary. So they only make voluntary payments. Ex gratia, as we call it. Nothing else exists. They don't have to pay anything. I think that's an exaggeration. I think, and we've all been there. It's hard. It's hard for them. It's hard for the client. It's hard for the intermediaries. It's not easy.
Well, it's really good.
The situation is desperate. I mean, Cathedral Peaks. I've been there. I don't know how many times I've stayed there. And it's sad. The world's in a very sad place.
Just to maybe recapture a little bit of your footprints and your footsteps. When you started Investec in 1975, did you have any inkling at that stage that it was going to be this giant that it's become?
Alec, I don't think I ever thought, Stephen will tell me that, I said, well, we're going to do this deal and that deal, and we're going to be like Salomon Brothers. Thank God we weren't. But I did say, maybe one day instead of walking across Hollard Street, we'll be walking in the city of London. Now, obviously you think, there's a big world out there, but I don't think for me, if you remember correctly, I was pretty introvert and nerdish, and it was just, I think this is something worthwhile doing. I like doing it. Do it. And what would come of it was not something I lay awake about. So it was.
And it's been such a privilege for me to have known you guys since the early 80s and to have watched this incredible success story for South Africans. But in 1988, I remember talking with you shortly before you left to go and live in the Netherlands. You've made a big success over there as well. Not too many people here appreciate A, what you've done there, and B, that you've stayed as David Shapiro and I believe anyway, you're the brains behind Investec. I'm sure that the other guys will agree to that. But it's
the brain, yeah.
What did you find over there that was so different to South Africa in the business experience?
Hi, David. If you're listening, hello. Nice to see you on screen as well. I think yeah, actually in many ways, obviously it's a different environment, different culture, different language. You need to learn the language. You need to know how they operate and think. But by and large, I can't claim that it was materially different. I mean, it's in many ways it's tighter. Things are correct or incorrect. There's very little latitude, and far more than a propensity for people not to take risk. Because if you had a career at Unilever or Royal Dutch or any one of those amazing businesses, you weren't going to sacrifice that career by going out on a limb, going out on your own. So I think if you were willing to be enterprising, that it was a good place to be. So it's changed. I mean, Amsterdam has become a hotbed for startups. And they've got some amazing high-tech firms, amazing. Silicon Valley doesn't exist without company called ASML, Advanced Semiconductors Materials Lithography. They're the biggest manufacturers in the world of wafer steppers, which manufacture the machines that actually make the chips. They have 80% of that market. They dominate it. And it's just outside Eindhoven, was a spin-off from Philips. So it's a very different environment now to what it was when we first got there.
A big question that entrepreneurs always ask is how you take an idea or a small business, a startup, to the next level. Now, you've done it,
Yeah.
45 years with Investec. How would you answer that question?
Oh, geez, Alex, many roads lead to Rome. I wish I knew the answer. We were talking about the brain earlier, and thank you and David calling me the brain, and Stephen used to call me the philosopher, and I've been called. But the brain was actually a collective organism. It's a very funny thing. I couldn't stand the bitching. You'd do something, and Larry, Errol, Bernard, Stephen, Glenn, they'd come and say, "Why did you do that? I told you not to do it." So I was going daft. And so I said, "Okay, guys, every morning at 7:30, we'll sit down." And we used to go to a little gym upstairs and in IGI building, a guy called Harry Ovens at 6 o'clock. And we'd all be ready. And 7:30, we'd sit down and I'd make notes in a diary. To this day, never stopped since then. And sometimes I made notes, sometimes I was just making things but I could remember what people had said. And we would not move until we'd agreed. So it could be we agreed that we can't make a decision because we'll have to review it tomorrow, next week, next year. And so that process of having to find agreement amongst each other, that was the brain. So it was a very instructive process because you found that we were arguing, which we were doing then and we still do now. But I think the process of having to find agreement with each other also meant that I wasn't a policeman. Everybody had agreed, everybody went off and did it. So I think that was the brain and that was the motor. So the motor really was this, and that evolved into groups as the business grew. So everybody, and people fought, they fought really hard. There's a guy called Morrison Tombeni, who's, I think he's got a very top position at Gibbs. And we've invited him to join the board of Investec South Africa. And he interviewed me 8-9 years, let's say 10 years ago. And he was doing his thesis on culture. And he said, "Can you define it?" And I went through this kind of story. And he said, "What were you guys fighting for?" So I said, "Well," he says, "You were fighting for the idea." And what we locked into was the idea. And I think that was both the brain and the driver of. So people had a good idea. You locked into it. You work out what you argued as to what we were going to do, wouldn't do, shouldn't do. And I think that one of his colleagues, who's now director, and she'll forgive me if I forget her name, the second of Gibbs, was also there. And somebody came up and said, "So how will you change the culture of Investec?" And she said, "Wrong question. Question is, how will you maintain the culture when Bernard and Steve and everybody moves on?" And she said, "No, the wrong question. The right question is, how will you change it and avoid it becoming a cult?" So it was that locking into idea was a very powerful thing and a difficult thing to change. And I don't think it should be changed. I think there are better ways of finding agreement than maybe we used to fight with each other and shout, call people names. Sorry, not the way I call. So yeah, the real thing is that people in finding solutions, let's say out of the box, a common kind of expression, that you don't get out the box until we recognize that you will have a different opinion to mine. Your opinion will be different to mine. And if there are 6 people at the table and we all have the same opinion, somebody is not necessary. In fact, 6 of us are not necessary. So you have different, and to reconcile those different opinions, because you have different ways of thinking, different ways of approaching, different perspectives, that's what develops the idea and develops the implementation of the idea.
Ian, I've learned so much from you and from the way that you've built this business, but perhaps the biggest learning was the way that you employed people. And Investec still does this. I hear from people who employed at Investec. There's no such thing as, well, this is my pal, he's going to come and work here tomorrow. You've got a particular process that from the initial part, if I recall, everybody in the company would actually interview you. Where did that come from?
Yeah, we had to stop that when we got to 180. I think it's correct. I mean, I think there were 2 sources of that. The one was that it's easier to employ people than to get rid of them. You understand that, and it makes the process a bit more obvious. And the second one was that we wanted to know people would fit in. So same as I've just discussed, you interview 6 people in the company, and if one person, as was this process that I've discussed with you, if one person, Bernard most often, would veto something, you couldn't move. So you had to first get rid of his veto and talk to him nicely and argue with him. And so it's the same with employment, was that if somebody vetoed, one veto was enough to say you don't get in. And because it was that important for us that people would fit in. And it was also a measure of trying to understand that in our environment, it's a lot easier to work with people who are fundamentally sound, decent, honest. Yeah, you've got trading desks, you've got credit, you've got money, you have a lot of money that belongs to other people. And it's very easy for dishonest people to create havoc. So having people who are decent and honest and open in both ways, open in terms of I don't have secrets, that's what we're doing, but also open to what you would say or anybody else had to suggest, that we would listen to it.
Something that continuously surprises me is Investec is such an amazing business, and I don't think you've got any clients who certainly in the retail sector who would disagree with that. You've raised the bar, yet the share price doesn't reflect that. So it's almost like you've got this amazing business. Why do you think that is, particularly in the last few years, where it hasn't been reflective of the underlying quality in the company?
Alec, I mean, it's a tough question to answer, and maybe I can answer it. Businesses go through phases. If you look in the initial phase, we got a business off the ground. We used to sit every day, literally when you were there, saying, are we going to survive? What do we have to do to survive? And then eventually we got the thing listed. We employed Bas. Bas was the most extraordinary man I've ever worked with, Bas Godol. In 1988, October 1988, when he phoned me in 1996. I had a wonderful relationship still have with Bas. In 1996 to say, Ian, we're going back to Holland, you need to find a successor, which I went out and did 2 years. Became Hugh, also wonderful, Hugh Herman, and but the price went. Now Stephen and I argue about it. I said it went up 100-fold. Stephen said it went up 280 times. I don't care, Either way, it's a hell of a lot of money, and it was a crazy amount of money, and so I think that was one period in the business. And then, of course, you get change comes in, and you try and do new things. to emigrate and go abroad, as I did in Amsterdam, it's extremely hard. I can't tell you how hard it was. To emigrate a business, I think is more difficult. It's very, very difficult. Nobody's waiting for you there. They're not saying, come on in, we'll make space for you. They're saying, get out of here, this is our turf. So very difficult to break in, and you've got to speak, certainly in the UK, this is not America. In America, you can walk in speaking English with any accent you like. They don't have an accent, and so they'll accept anybody's accent. You walk into the UK, you don't speak the Queen's English. What are you doing here? Who are you? Go away. Okay. So I think that makes it doubly difficult. And so doing those kinds of things didn't make life easier. And then you had change coming in, business growing, a lot of new people, new processes, IT moving very quickly, and the banking system coming under massive pressure. In fact, if you look at, let's say, the Russell Index, which is not, so it's the index that doesn't include Amazon, the FANGs, and those kind of companies, that you'll see that since the late 90s hasn't gone anywhere. So I don't think that the share price is particularly reflective of the development in the company. When I look at the company now, and that's why I'm happy to be leaving at this point, I think the environment and the problems that the company had to face and is dealing with are severe. I don't think it's fun. I don't think it's going to be easy. But when I look at the quality of the board and management, I'm absolutely thrilled. And the process. So if you look at the board, the subcommittees of the board, people like Mark Malach-Brown, Zarina Basso, chairman of the audit committee, she's absolutely outstanding. Mark's a great guy. Ethics, he espouses, he espouses the culture of Investec better than anybody I've ever heard. And Fani lives it better than anybody I've ever met. Fani's just an extraordinary guy. I have an enormous regard for him. Sometimes in the meetings, I'm just awed by the way he deals with things. Look at David Friedland on risk. I mean, he's been around a long time, David. He's seen a hell of a lot. He knows. And he's quite prepared to stand up and say no, or I don't like it, or what's happening. So the quality of the subcommittees and Phil Huckabee, top guy at Ernst & Young worldwide, South African. So it just gives you a NOMDAC, which is so fundamental that you get the nomination of your directors right and the behavior. So it's nominations, directors affairs committee. It gives me a hell of a lot of hope, and Perry's done Perry Crossway has done a great job in the past period through this whole change and the split with asset management, which I think is a great thing. I think asset management deserves to be focused. Hendrik's built a great business, Hendrik and Kembe, and the guys that got with him, and it gives them a chance to really focus and go for their strategy, which is the top 1,000, and I think they'll do extremely well. I'm happy that Investec didn't sell the last share because the price wasn't right. I'm happy because I wouldn't like to have sold it. And I think when I look at Investec, times are tough, but I look at the team and the way Fani has dealt with some really difficult issues. And the team he's got there, Kieran in the UK, Richard, who's been around for a long time, you know him well, I'm sure, in South Africa, Michelin as CFO, absolutely outstanding. It's an outstanding team, and I've seen a lot of good teams in where I live. I know, not to drop names, but I know the guys who chair ABN AMRO, ING, those kind of organizations. And I know some of them extremely well. I know their teams. It's a good team. It's a seriously good team. So I don't know what will come and who knows the future. I certainly don't. But I'm happy that when I leave, it's in Investec itself, the organization is in a good the business is tough, but the business is in a good space.
45 years. That's a lifetime. During that period, you've obviously learned a lot, but I know you also read a lot.
Yes.
You still consume those books voraciously?
I devour, yeah. And the new thing, you have children, and your children teach you things. So now get trapped into these blogs. And some of them are just astounding blogs. You want to listen to a good blog? There's a guy called Alexi Friedman, F-R-I or F-R-I-E, I don't remember. And he interviews a guy called grew up in East Germany, head of artificial intelligence at Harvard, grew up in a windmill with his parents, Yosha Khan. You listen to it, it's mind-blowing. So yes, I mean, I find I'm just everything around me when I get up early in the morning and I go out. I'm not religious in a religious sense, but I'm awed by what I see around me, and I think in that sense I'm devout in the belief that it's magnificent. It's not by chance, and we shouldn't screw it up. But yes, I read a lot. So I can be very boring.
Ian, how are you reading the world right now? This COVID or the post-COVID existence. Many people say it's going to be very different. Things are going to change a lot.
I think things have changed. I don't think we will be doing things the way we used to. I don't think life will be what it was, and generally I think there'll be less money. But having said the less money, you may remember him when we were young, both of us. I remember hearing a guy talk one day. His name was Blanchard, and he was professor at a university, and he was head of, I forget, the IMF, the World Bank, or both. I'm not, you know. And he just told an interesting story. He said that governments should borrow money. Because it's obvious, because if you borrow, have I got time? We've got another few minutes just for this story.
You've got time. Yeah, of course.
If you borrow 100, let's say 100% of GDP, and you've then got to repay on average a quarter, 25% per annum. So you've got to repay 25% of GDP per annum. And GDP grows nominally by 3% in excess of your interest rate. So inflation plus GDP real is higher than the interest rate. That difference drops to your bottom line because you go and borrow the same percentage of GDP. So just pick a number, 100. So you go borrow 106%, interest rates 3%. 3% is a surplus. It's a profit for government to dish out or to reduce the debt by or whatever they do with it. So that's a great story. And he said governments don't borrow enough. They must borrow more money. Ryan Kantor, I haven't spoken to him for a while. I haven't been meaning to. I see he publishes things that say the same thing. Borrow more money. Right? I don't believe you can print money. That's gone. Volker killed that. And since then, interest rates and inflation have all come down. So you borrow more money, and which you then can use in, like, at this point in time, I think government should borrow as much as they can. The problem is, where is the limit? And that story holds so long as GDP grows. So, but if you take a case like the US, and let's say the limit of what you can borrow is around 100% of GDP, maybe a bit more because interest rates are low. Because it's got to be plausible that you can repay it. In Austria, I don't know if you followed the story, the 100-year bond, 100-year bond, 2 years ago, issued at 2%. Heavily oversubscribed, 2 years to put your money away for 100 years. And the rate dropped to 0.38. That's a bit ridiculous. They've just reissued another new one now, another 100-year bond at 1%. Heavily oversubscribed. Something like 5 to 10 times oversubscribed. So when governments, so the question is whether you can repay. Europe, average debt to GDP less than 60%. Even if they borrow another 30% now and go to 90, life's okay. America, if you take government and the states, just close to 100, I think 180% of GDP. It's a different kind of game. And if you then borrow another 20, 30% of that to cover COVID and the hardship, and you have to, because else you have social unrest and it's not going to be pleasant for anybody, and you can already see it on the streets. For whatever reason people will find, and I think maybe it happens to be legitimate, but that's irrelevant. unrest is not going to be fun, so they'll have to borrow money and spend it to keep people out of that kind of distress correctly. Okay. Now comes the problem. When GDP grows by 3%, that's fantastic. But when you go from 180 to 240, and you don't grow by 3%, GDP shrinks by 10%, then debt to GDP goes to 240 on 150. Yeah, that's a different kind of a problem. So that's massive. Then you've got to say to yourself, are they going to pay me back? And at that point, you get financial disruption. And at that point, the lenders may question whether they want to lend their money to the United States.
It's a fascinating insight. Thank you, Ian. David, I'm sure you've got, before we let Ian go, a question or two.
No, just on what Ian's doing at the moment. I mean, I followed his career. There's a point I want to make, and I think it's very interesting when we go to the history of Investec, because where I said Ian was a visionary, it was in those early days that he identified professionals. That's where they made their mark. They said, professionals are going to pay us back because it's going to be a doctor, a dentist, an accountant. And that's where Ian was way ahead of the market. I know there were other wannabes and people who tried to copy him, but that was the foundation and the essence of Investec, the ground or the foundation on which they built the business. And, all credit to Ian and that. Yes, they became a bank later. They were initially a finance company and that. And maybe, when I reflect on Investec and reflect on companies like Liberty Life as well, it's so sad to see what's happened to Intl and that. Donnie Gordon had a very similar type of approach, and that it was a very specified market that they targeted, and gave them the edge on everybody else as well. And somehow that's gone a bit fuzzy, and it's probably not their fault that other people came and started eating their lunches and that. But that's why I always admired Ian and that, for the basis on which Investec was built. And there's not a professional around, that doesn't deal with Investec.
Yeah, David, I think they have built, and again, I mean, I don't think that was visionary. It was, again, this thing of you sit down and you try and make a credit decision, and everybody's fighting. Yeah, you can do it. No, you can't do it. Bernard came in one day and said, we've got to lend money to this guy because he comes to work every day with his lunchbox. It was valid. He was telling us that the decent, hardworking man. By the way, Dave, when I look at you, I say to myself, I always swore I would never run a marathon. I ran how many half marathons? Hundreds. But I admire you for doing that and for being what you've done also in the financial industry. But when I look at Investec, that was my marathon. I'm very happy to have crossed the finishing line. But getting back to the professional, so when you would then say, okay, but hang on a minute, if we just do doctors and dentists at the time, you don't have to think. There's no idea. So we don't have to have these meetings. We don't have to worry. We know they're good for the money. Guy phones you up, says, can I have a Mercedes for 5,000 Rand? I said, you do the deal. And as somebody, I think Sam Hackner said one day, the problem is things have changed. When you went to Grolman, you said the guy wants a Mercedes. The only question he asked was what color. So, and Errol, amazing. I mean, but it was this thing of trying to make life easy, not difficult. And specializing makes life easy. So if you look again, in this card they have the Enigma. The feedback I've had from top people who've built big businesses, run big companies on the Enigma, that the service is phenomenal. It's outstanding, and it is good. So if you can find an area to focus, and yes, you build areas, they link, you join the dots. You don't always join them properly. But that's how you do live and find out.
Ian, you mentioned a moment ago Errol Grolman, the late Errol Grolman, Stephen Kossef, Larry Destat, your brother Bernard, and yourself. You guys were a tight-knit team.
Yes.
how did that chemistry work? Was it just luck, or did you select those early partners of yours?
So I think somebody says to you, what's the most important decision you make in your life? What made you successful? So, well, I chose the right parents in the right place, okay? Nothing else. And I think businesses are the same, that you kind of happen to fall into a thing that's interesting to you, and you meet other people who like the same thing. And you know, Napoleon, don't give me clever generals, give me lucky generals. So there is a bit, and so you need luck, and you also need to be able to keep your mouth shut and listen. And I think that, again, that process locked us in. There was no doubt that you locked into the idea, but nobody left. To this day, nobody left voluntarily. I can claim I left voluntarily, but you know, and obviously I knew my time was up. But you don't want to leave. It's just so much fun. And it's difficult when people are struggling and suffering to say, we worked bloody hard. Alec, and you know, we really worked our butts off, but we loved it. We loved what we were doing. And we loved the idea we were working for. And so I guess that locked us in a kind of, with hindsight, in a funny way, in a miraculous way. It's also very restrictive. For Bus came in was Bus could do it. Hugh Herman, they were top class people, could do it. And it becomes very difficult. When I look at a guy like Fani, I can tell you how well we've done. Fantastic, man. Fani came from Windberg. He can tell you his story better than I can. Kumo, who's chairman of Investec Bank, South Africa. Ask him to tell you where he was in Sharpeville, 1976. We were all there. We all know what happened. 1,000 people got killed. Ask him where he was. On the floor in his schoolroom at the age of 6, lying flat. When they, it's not where you are, it's where you've come from. So we have people like that, and that's, I have a huge admiration and respect for them. And not to blow smoke up Fani and Kumo's arse, but they don't need it. And unfortunately, we've got a few people there, and then there's a big hole where we don't have enough people who didn't have the same kind of advantages, privileges we had. But hopefully we'll get there. And I know that Stephen and the team at the time did a hell of a lot to encourage people in. We haven't done enough to encourage them to stay. So when they've learned everything, Stephen will complain when you train people for 10 years and then they leave. Well, you trained them too well, or you didn't look after them. I don't know. I don't have that answer, but I'm just saying that where our luck was this thing of couldn't stand the bullshit, so we sit down and agree everything and fight until we agreed. And that locked us into each other to this day. I don't care what you say to me. You can fight with me as long as you like. I'll say good morning tomorrow morning. How are you doing?
Yeah, and just to close off with, you must be asked this a lot, but young people who looking for advice, they're looking to have a successful career. What one book, or maybe a couple of books, would you tell them to read?
Siddhartha, Story of Buddha, tells you to get your ego out the way. Life's a flowing river, and you're just part of that river. So don't get hung up on yourself, please.
Ian Kantor, it's been a privilege chatting with you today. Thank you for making the time for us, and look forward to the next time. Congratulations on 45 years. Did you do any research into if anybody else lasted that long on a board of a company?
Lots of many more successful people than I've been, and they've lasted on boards. Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, 93, 5 hours and standing and still going strong. That's, there's a lot more to be done, and hopefully I'm going to do a lot more.
Thank you, Ian. Look forward to talking to you about that adventure as well. Until the next time. You too. Cheerio.
Bye.
David, before we sign off for today, wasn't that special?
Very, very special. And I've got a huge amount of respect for Ian. Massive amount, and it's so wonderful to see him. But there's one thing that you can take away from this and what to buy. He mentioned a company, ASML.
You've
Just
told us
remember it.
before.
Oh, no,
A,
ASML.
ASML.
Brilliant business. Yeah,
You said it.
brilliant business. I have.
Okay, we're going to have to put that in our portfolio, Dave.
It's one of it's you know, another business is booking.com, which is also there. But you know, Ian mentioned what's happening in Amsterdam, and there's a huge amount of tech breakthroughs, etc. But ASML, and Ian explained it so you know, so succinctly. They make the equipment that allows you to make semiconductors. Without them, you can't make a semiconductor.
We got the NASPERS and the process results out this afternoon or this evening. And Bob van Dijk is obviously also based in Amsterdam. So there's certainly method in that, if not madness, in that that sensible idea. And I guess many South Africans, given the predominance in portfolios of NASPERS, have got a vested interest in Ian Kantor being right.
Exactly.
Well, very special day. It was lovely talking with Ian, and I think perhaps because he is so low profile and so reticent, usually doesn't really have many interviews. It really was a privilege to have him on the show today. And I still think that reunion of the Investec founders will be something quite special. We'll start working on that. All right, Mr. Shapiro, I'll see you next time. You want to just tell us, for those who might have joined late, where they can get hold of a recording?
Thanks, Alec. Yes, thanks for the fascinating discussion. Lots of institutional memory that will help a lot of us, I think, with that discussion with Ian. Just on the chat box, I've put the YouTube channel link there, Alec. As we do, we put all our webinars on there. So for this one, all previous webinars, if anyone wants to, they can just click on that link and even subscribe, because then they'll get updated when new sort of product is placed on the site. So yes, Alec, that's all good from our side. And obviously we'll get this one up as soon as possible for those who want to reflect on what was said, etc.
There was also a question from Saul Gorin, who said Ian Kantor recommended a blog. Can you confirm it? Who it was? We'll put that onto the the transcript as well.
Thanks.
So
yes,
thanks.
That was Lex Friedman, Alec. If anyone wants to go, it's Lex. Fridman is the author for that, but I'll put it onto the site as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stu. Excellent. Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks for being with us today. I know we did overstay our usual 1 hour, but I'm sure you'll agree it was well worth it. Until the next time, cheerio.